Epicurus versus Plato. Why Plato is wrong about the immortal soul. Plato famously argued that the soul is immortal, immaterial, and distinct from the body. In works such as Phaedo, he claims that the soul never dies, but passes into another body, and that it preexists before inhabiting the body. Plato, Phaedo 80d 81a. According to Plato, the soul's immaterial nature allows it to grasp eternal truths, while the body is a prison that confines it. However, this notion is fundamentally flawed when examined through the lens of Epicurus' atomic theory, empirical observation, and even scriptural insight. Epicurus, in sharp contrast, denied the existence of an immortal soul. He proposed that everything, including the soul, is composed of atoms moving in the void. In Letter to Menoeceus, Epicurus writes, "The soul is made of fine atoms spread throughout the body, and it perishes with the body." Epicurus, Letter to Menoeceus. For Epicurus, consciousness arises from the interaction of these atoms in the body, particularly in the heart and brain, and ceases when the body dies. There is no mystical, indestructible essence. The soul is fully material, like every other part of the natural world. Lucretius, a devoted Epicurean, reinforces this in Rerum Natura, Book 3. All sensations, all thoughts are of the body. When the body perishes, these too perish, and the mind dissolves. Lucretius 3.83 to 835. This underscores the complete mortality of the soul. Plato's arguments for the soul's immortality rely on abstract reasoning rather than observable phenomena. In the Phaedo, he asserts the argument from opposites, claiming that life arises from death and death from life, so the soul must survive bodily death. Yet this argument is circular and unsupported empirically. The return of life from death is not observed in humans. Biological death is final. The cyclical reasoning that Plato employs assumes rather than demonstrates the immortality of the soul. Epicurus critiques precisely this kind of speculation. He argues that natural phenomena can and should be explained by the movements and arrangements of atoms. Death is nothing to us, for when we exist, death is not yet present, and when death is present, then we do not exist. Epicurus, Letter to Menoeceus. Lucretius similarly notes, "Death, the dissolution of all things, we must view with calm. It brings no pain, for we do not exist to feel it." 3.83 to 840. Consciousness is a property of the living arrangement of atoms. When these arrangements disperse, consciousness ends. Plato's immortal soul is thus unnecessary and unsupported by reason or observation. Plato also claims that the soul knows the forms, eternal, unchanging truths, through recollection, suggesting that knowledge is evidence of the soul's preexistence. Meno, 81c to 82b. Epicurus counters this by explaining that knowledge comes from sensory experience and mental association of atomic impressions, called idola. In this view, the mind learns through interaction with the material world, not through recollection of pre-existent truths. Plato's forms exist only in an abstract realm, yet Epicurus demonstrates that all mental phenomena can be understood materially. There is no need to posit an immaterial realm or immortal soul to explain understanding, memory, or reasoning. Epicurus's materialist account also resolves ethical and psychological questions more coherently than Plato's dualism. Plato's immortal soul implies that virtue is valuable for its consequences in an afterlife, creating a reliance on metaphysical reward or punishment. Epicurus grounds morality in the pursuit of pleasure and avoidance of pain within one life, consistent with a finite existence. It is impossible to live a pleasant life without living wisely and well and justly. Letter to Menoeceus. This approach aligns with observable reality. Humans experience joy, suffering, and death as natural physical processes. The belief in an immortal soul is unnecessary for ethical motivation and introduces contradictions, such as how a non-material soul could interact causally with the body. Epicurus's materialism also aligns with a modern understanding of physiology. The soul, as the seat of consciousness, is dependent on bodily processes. In ancient terms, Epicurus identified it with the fine atoms dispersed in the body, primarily in the blood, heart, and brain. Modern biology confirms that consciousness depends on oxygenated blood, neural activity, and cellular processes. Without these material supports, thought and sensation cease. Plato's immaterial soul cannot account for the observable dependence of mental activity on physical states, such as injury, illness, or aging. Epicurus's atomic soul, in contrast, is fully compatible with these observations. Scriptural passages further support a material view of the soul consistent with Epicurus. In Genesis 2:7, it is written that Yahweh Elohim formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Similarly, in Leviticus 17 verse 11, the life or soul is associated with the blood. For the soul of the flesh is in the blood. Psalm 146:4 confirms mortality. His breath departs, he returns to the earth. On that very day his plans perish. Ecclesiastes 9:5 states, "For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing." These passages describe the soul as inseparable from the physical body and its breath or blood, material elements necessary for life. Epicurus' view that the soul is composed of atoms carried in the bloodstream mirrors this biblical description. The soul is the physical breath of life, dependent on material processes and mortal. There is no indication in Scripture that the soul is an indestructible, immaterial entity. Rather, life itself is a material phenomenon sustained by oxygen and blood. Furthermore, these materialist views are confirmed by modern medical science and physics. Consciousness is clearly a function of the brain, dependent on neural activity, blood flow, and cellular processes. When these fail, awareness ceases. If the soul were merely energy, it would still be subject to physical laws, including the second law of thermodynamics, which governs the inevitable dispersal and decay of energy in closed systems. There is no evidence of any energy-based entity surviving bodily death. Rather, all observations support that mental phenomena arise from and end with the material body. This aligns perfectly with Epicurus and Lucretius. The soul, as a configuration of atoms, is mortal, dissolving with the body at death. In conclusion, Plato's theory of an immortal, immaterial soul is contradicted by reason, observation, scripture, and modern science. Epicurus' atomic account provides a coherent explanation of consciousness, memory, and ethical life, all rooted in material reality. The soul is composed of fine atoms, dispersed throughout the body, and perishes with it. Biblical references to life and soul in Genesis, Leviticus, Psalm 146, and Ecclesiastes further reinforce this understanding. The soul is not immortal, but is physically instantiated in the blood and breath. Modern medical science and physics confirm that consciousness depends entirely on neural activity, blood flow, and cellular processes. When these fail, awareness ceases. Plato's metaphysical abstractions fail to account for the observable facts of life, death, and the dependence of mental activity on the body, whereas Epicurus' materialism offers clarity, consistency, and alignment with both empirical observation and sacred text.